Today we are going to preview the round of 8. Of course, the next 3 races in the NASCAR Cup Series are going to be the NASCAR playoffs still. Round of 8, 4 drivers will be eliminated and 4 drivers will go to not Homestead Miami Speedway. I knew that was going to happen eventually, but they're going to be going to Phoenix Raceway to compete for a championship. First time Phoenix has had the championship. Remember, it used to be at Homestead. That's why I almost said Homestead for about 20 years. But now it's at Phoenix. So we're not going to talk about Phoenix at all, but we're going to talk about, we're going to give each driver a reason why they're going to make it, and then also going to talk about maybe why they won't make it. Starting off with the top of the grid, those top 2, I don't think I need to give much of an explanation for why they'll make it. They have the points. They have a 30, 40-point gap on everyone else when it comes to the cutoff line, and they're good at all these tracks. Hamlin can win. He's the one of the last 2 Kansas races. He won at Texas last year, and he's really good at Martinsville historically. He's like, obviously something can go wrong, but he's basically a lock. Harvick, Kansas, he's really good at. Texas, he's won the last, I want to say, 3 fall races there, so he's pretty confident at that race. Martinsville, he's not as strong as Hamlin or some of these other guys in the field, but if he can just get by in the first 2 races, he'll still have a 40, 50-point gap, and he just needs to survive Martinsville, which he can do. So I expect Harvick to make it through easily. As for Keselowski, he won at Kansas last year. Texas, he is yet to win at. He's had some good runs, but Texas I would not consider his strength. So that might be a weak point for them in this round. And then Martinsville, obviously, we know how good they are on the short tracks this year. The 750 package, they've won at Bristol, New Hampshire, Richmond. So they've won on some of these shorter tracks. So they know how to get it done. And then obviously they do have a win on a 1.5 mile at the Charlotte Motor Speedway, the Coca-Cola 600. So they could very much pull out a win at the other 2 tracks. But for Keselowski, I think they don't have as much as a point gap, but they still do have a decent gap. I think they have a 13-point gap right now. So they still have that could obviously be taken away in one stage, but I think they need to run top 5 Kansas, maybe top 15, top 10 at Texas, and hope some other guys have problems. And then Martinsville, I think that's their best opportunity if they want to win in advance. And if it did come down to a must-win, I think that out of these guys, that would be the team I'm most confident in, other than Hamlin and Harvick, if they were in a must-win situation to win at that race at Martinsville because of how strong they've been on the short track. So Keselowski, for him to make it, I think those first 2 races, top 10s, top 5s, obviously will do. But if it did come down to it, I trust that team the most to win at Martinsville. So he doesn't have as much as a point gap, but he can't afford any mistakes. He can't afford to be caught up in a wreck. He can't afford any mechanical failures. They have to run well. They do have a 13-point gap, which is good. But Chase Elliott, Joey Logano, Martin Truex Jr. are all right there in an 18-point kind of. Those 4 guys are all within 18 points. So Keselowski really can't afford any mistakes. Moving on to some of the guys who are really close on that bubble. Elliot has a 5-point gap on Logano 5 back. Then Truex is 10 back. Those 3 guys, if any one of them, I think those 3, if they want to feel absolutely safe, this is stating the obvious, they got to win. So you look at Chase Elliott, I think his best opportunity to win is Martinsville because they've been really good at the 750 tracks this year. You look at the road courses, you look at Bristol. You even look at tracks like New Hampshire. They didn't do as great, but they still did decent. So I think that track for them specifically, especially considering the last couple of years they've done really well at Martinsville. They got a top 5 in the spring, I think. I think that's their best opportunity for winning. But Kansas is another really good opportunity for them. They've won there 2 years ago, I think. They ran top 5 here last year. They didn't do too well in the summer, but you got to expect them to step up at that track because that Texas race, they have been terrible at Texas ever since the repave. I think their best finish is like 12th. So they can't afford a bad race. They really can't. They can't afford a 15th or worse, or even a 10th or worse, I want to say, depending on what happens with everyone else. So that team, if they want to make it to the championship 4, they're rather going to have to step up their game at Texas and Kansas, or they're going to have to win at Martinsville, Kansas, or Texas. And I'm not confident in that team at Texas, but I think they do have a good shot at Martinsville, but I think they have a really good shot at Kansas as well. So I think they can win one of those 2 races. They'll make it, but Once again, Texas is a weak point for them. If they can win at Kansas, they don't have to worry about it. But if they don't win at Kansas, they need to run top three. Top three, get as many stage points as possible. So if you do have a bad day at Texas, you can still be within striking range at Martinsville. As for Joey Logano, all three of these tracks I feel good for him. Joey Logano, he's played the spoiler in the championship before. You look at 2018, he was not expected to beat the big three, but he did that. He won at Martinsville. So that's what we're going to look at first. Martinsville, once again, Team Penske overall has done really good at the short tracks as well. Keselowski's got 3 wins there. Blaney has shown speed at these short tracks. Logano in June, I guess, whenever the Martinsville race was, he led a buttload of laps. He led, I think, 200 laps there or something. So I expect him to run well there again. I expect him to be up front, leading laps, maybe winning stages. But for them, I think they're obviously gonna have to beat Elliot straight up or outgain him in points if they want to point their way in. But a win is important because what if a guy like Bowman or Kurt Busch wins? Then that point situation just completely flips. It completely switches on you. You go from being 5 back to being 13 back. So I think winning is so important in this format. I think every one of these guys, if they want to feel comfortable, they're going to have to win. I hate stating the obvious, but it's true. Other than that, though, I think Logano, Kansas, they've been good at before. A few years ago, they had a couple wins. They haven't been as strong ever since the new package, but I think they could pull something out. They do have a win at 1.5 miles this year at Las Vegas, so they could definitely pull some strategy, get up front, something like that. I think they could do really well. Martin Truex Jr. Truex is he's won the last 2 Martinsville races, so I think, once again, I feel like everyone's best shot that I've talked about so far is Martinsville. You look at Keselowski, Elliot, Logano, all those guys have been really good at Martinsville the past couple of years. Same with Martin Truex Jr. Got his first win at Martinsville last year, won there over the summer. I'm confident that they can do it again, but the thing about them is, we'll talk about that later when we're making a case for them to not make it. But anyways, I think they can do decent at Kansas and Texas. I think top 10's there, but I think they can win any given week. I think that team is good enough to win any given week, but Martinsville is their best opportunity to win, Texas, for them, hasn't been amazing. It hasn't been horrific, but Kansas, they've done better at for sure. Joe Gibbs as a whole, I would say. So I think Kansas and Martinsville are the best 2 shots, with Martinsville being the best shot. Moving on to the 2 guys who are really far behind in points, and if they can't, they're going to need to make up a lot of points. I'm going to put them in a must-win, basically. But Bowman and Kurt Busch. Bowman's best opportunity to win is Kansas, straight up. Not Martinsville, straight up Kansas. You look at the past couple of years, Bowman's run really good on these kind of high-speed, multi-groove tracks, 1.5 miles. He almost won both the Las Vegas races this year if he didn't get poorly timed cautions. Last year, he won Chicagoland. He almost won the spring race at Kansas. So Bowman has been really good at these multi-groove 1.5 mile tri-ovals. And that team, they found something there that they've been able to run really well at. So I think he could play spoiler for this championship 4. But I think it's going to have to happen at Kansas. As I said with Elliot, Hendrick Motorsports as a whole has not been running great at Texas outside of, surprisingly, Jimmy Johnson. Elliot's probably been the weakest, I'd say, and then Bowman and Byron are probably in the same spot. But Jimmy's been the strongest out of the 4, and Jimmy's had a terrible 3 years. So, I mean, I don't think any Hendrick car should feel good about Texas. But overall, as I said, I think Bowman's got to win at Kansas if he wants to make it. I don't think they can make up that points gap. And then as for Kurt Busch, the reason he's here is because he won at Las Vegas. I think they're going to need something similar. I don't have faith in this team that they can make it on points. They can make up those points gap, be consistent enough. But, you never know. They could show up. Martinsville, Kurt Busch has won out recently. I think it was 5 years ago. Chip Ganassi's had some good cars at Kansas in the past. Texas, Kurt's won it at the past, so I don't know. It's going to be a tough round. As for Kurt, I think it's the toughest to make a case for, but it's going to be a must-win at any of those tracks. As for guys who aren't going to make it, or for my case for not making it, we're officially to the not making. Kurt and Bowman, they don't win, they don't get in my opinion. Simple as that. I don't think they run well enough They can't point their way in. They're too far behind and they're not good enough. So if they don't win, they don't make it. Truex not making it is because he doesn't have the wins this year. If he can't win, obviously Hamlin, the 5 guys in front of him, one of those guys, at least 2, maybe even 3 of those guys is going to win a race. And if one of the guys behind him wins, he's screwed. So he's got to win. He could try to outpoint these guys, but as I said, some of these guys are much better at these 3 tracks than Truex, Logano, Keselowski, Harvick, and Hamlin. Those are 4 right there. So Truex, I'm not going to put him in a must-win, but it's not looking good for him considering there are guys that are better at these tracks than they are. So there's that. As for Logano, they have not been as strong in the mile and a halves in the past as they have been, and that concerns me. So if they go into these mile and a half tracks and they just kind of put together a meh performance, which for them would be 10th to 15th, that's not going to cut it. Kevin Harvick, Denny Hamlin, Brad Keselowski, Chase Elliott, even Martin Truex Jr., they're going to run top 5, top 10. If you're running 10th to 15th at best, that's going to get you nowhere. So Logano, they haven't been horrific on these mile and a halves, but they definitely haven't been as good as they used to be, which concerns me a little bit. Martinsville definitely gives me hope for that team to make the championship 4 on a win. But let's say they have a mediocre Texas and Kansas and they go into Martinsville with a must win. It's Martinsville. Anything could happen and you can't really rely on winning there. But yeah, that's my case for him not making it, Logano, if they run mediocre. As for Elliot, the case for him is that he hasn't made it before. So why would he make it now, I guess. But yeah, they've been in this position 4 years in a row or something now. And they've yet to crack the championship 4. They've yet to make it there. So I don't have as much confidence. And one of their best tracks in that round of 8 in the past was Phoenix, and that's now the championship race. And so these 3 tracks, Kansas used to be a really strong track for them, but after how they ran earlier this year, I kind of lost some confidence there. Texas, they've been horrendous at, so I have no confidence there. Martinsville gives me some hope, but I mean, you got guys who are better than you there. Logano, Keselowski, Hamlin. One of those guys, if they beat you and you run poorly like you did in the summer at Texas and Kansas, a top 5 is not going to get you anywhere at Martinsville. Logano might outpoint you or win. Truex might outpoint you and win. So once again, same thing as Logano. You run mediocre in those first 2 races, you're screwed. And unlike Logano, Elliott's never been there. He's never won to make it in the championship 4. He's never pointed his way. And if you remember last year, they had a horrendous round of 8. They were like 100 points below the cutoff line going into Phoenix. It was terrible. They wrecked every single race. So if they do that again, they have no hope. So if they can keep the wheels on the car, it's better than last year. But the confidence for me there is that Texas is terrible, and that's such a weak point. If they're not able to do well enough in the other 2 tracks, they're not going to make it. As for Keselowski, here's where the cases get hard for telling these guys they're going to miss. Keselowski, they would have to run so bad at Texas and Kansas. And if they're in a must-win at Martinsville, I said I'm really confident in them for a must-win at Martinsville. And then something would have to happen to Martinsville. I'm telling you, it's hard to make a case against Keselowski with Martinsville in this round. Even if they have a bad Texas and Kansas, I would say they got a great opportunity to win at Martinsville. But if they do run bad at Kansas and Texas, and let's say one of the guys like Bowman or Kurt win at Kansas and Texas, that shortens the gap. And then let's say Logano has a really good round, and he outpoints Keselowski going into Martinsville. All Logano's got to do is beat Keselowski, and Keselowski's out. So Keselowski, it's very hard to make a case for him to miss, but it's definitely possible. More possible than the next 2 guys. And these next 2 guys I'm going to do together once again, Hamlin and Harvick. It's going to take, if either of these guys miss the championship 4, it's a crime. It's an actual crime. It's ridiculous, but it would take a lot. Here's the most likely situation I see for one of these guys missing. Alex Bowman wins Kansas. There's a really weird Texas race. Kurt Busch or Martin Truex Jr. wins. And then we go to Martinsville, and at the last second, there's a weird pit strategy, and Joey Logano wins. So there's 3 spots locked up on wins. There's 2 people named Kevin Harvick, or there's 1 person named Kevin Harvick, 1 person named Denny Hamlin. One of them's got to miss it, you know? One of them has to miss if that's the case, which is a crime. But you look at this round, out of these 3 tracks, I think Kansas right now goes to Hamlin. Texas definitely goes to Harvick because of how well they've done there the past couple of years. And Martinsville goes to Hamlin, and frankly, Harvick hasn't been great at Martinsville in his career. Harvick's he's won at Martinsville before, but you look at every other track he's been at in his career, he's done great. He's won multiple races. He's led a ton of laps. But Martinsville, every time I think about Martinsville, I'm like, that's not Kevin Harvick's track. And if it came down to him and Hamlin, I would give the advantage to Hamlin. But if something were to happen to Hamlin, obviously Harvick. So the only way I see one of those 2 guys missing is chaos, utter chaos. It would take 3 guys below the cut line winning, or 3 guys not named Hamlin and Harvick winning. And I expect both of them to win in this round. I expect Hamlin to win Kansas or Martinsville, and I expect Harvick to win Texas. So it's that simple. But yeah, that was long. I don't know if I convinced you either way. If I did, cool. Other than that, I hope that it doesn't end up with a wacky round of it. I mean, yeah, it's cool when there's chaos in the playoffs and stuff, like a crazy wreck or something that eliminates someone, or there's a fight. But if Hamlin or Harvick gets eliminated, this system is stupid. I mean, I've been saying it's stupid for years, but yeah, I expect Hamlin and Harvick to make it. I know I just made a case for them to not make it, but the case for them to make it is so much easier. So don't believe that one. If they do miss it, that's absurd. But as for Keselowski, Elliot, Logano, Truex, everyone that's not Hamlin or Harvick has a really tough road, because if someone wins and it messes up the playoff grid, it's going to be weird. This system's weird. It's hard to make a case when you think about all the other factors that could affect it. So anyways, I'm going to cut off this video. This has been a really long time, but thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Round of 8 previews complete, or the not predictions, but the kind of situations maybe. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Have a great rest of your day.